me, which was, why don't the grown-ups seem to understand us?
Right,
So
right.
as you say, we were the Gen Xers. It was the early 90s. I worked at a Wall Street law firm for 428 days precisely. And while I was there, I noticed that the older, more experienced people didn't seem to understand where my peers and I were coming from. And I had a senior partner tell me one time, all of you young lawyers are a bunch of slackers. And I said, well, gee, Kim went to Georgetown, and Bob went to Harvard, and I went to NYU, and Ray went to Columbia. And I mean, are you sure slacker is the word you're looking for? And I said, if you only knew what the young lawyers were whispering about over lunch, sir. And he got really interested, and he said,
Yeah.
what are you all whispering about over lunch? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to write an article about that. So I started interviewing young people, and I was going to write an article called What Your Young Employees Are Whispering About Over Lunch. And that turned into Managing Generation X.
Nice.
And when that book came out, it hit like a freight train. It was just the right timing. The older, more experienced people were looking at Gen Xers and saying, "You're disloyal. You have a short attention span. You don't want to work as hard. You demand immediate gratification. You want everything your own way, and you want it right now. This is an outrage, right?" And here I published this book saying, well, maybe there's some things going on here that you don't understand, and here's what young people are saying about all this. And for a while, there were more news stories about that book than the number of books that had been sold. There was an AP Wire story that came out.
Wow.
It was only 700 words or something, or maybe even less than that, and it was in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of newspapers. That led to a little piece in the Christian Science Monitor, and then Business Week, NPR, CNN, all this stuff. And so business leaders started calling me. And it wasn't like newfangled businesses in the 90s. It wasn't those early dot coms. It was Anheuser-Busch and GE and the
Wow.
YMCA and the United
Wow.
States Army. And they all wanted to say basically what's wrong with, young people today, and what can we do to try to bring out the best in young talent. So that's how my career started.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and then, very quickly, I was going around talking to business leaders in the biggest organizations all over the world. And what I would say to them is, gee, I'm only 28 years old. I don't really know very much about business. So I'd be happy to come talk to you about your young people, but may I first interview them? And then I'll tell you basically what they said, you know. And so that became my shtick. And, since then, that was 33 years ago, we've interviewed more than 500,000 people from more than 400 organizations. Thousands and thousands and thousands of our interviews have been longitudinal. They've gone on for 10 or 15 or 20 years. There are still some people we're interviewing who I first interviewed back in 1993. So, what we have, the question we have continued to pursue ever since then is, among people of all ages.
Yeah.
How are you looking at your working life and career? What makes you want to go work someplace? What makes you want to work smarter, faster, better? What makes you want to work harder? What makes you want to contribute more? What makes you want to stay longer? What makes you want to leave? And frankly, tell us about your best boss. Tell us about your bosses who are not so good. And we've just continued to do those interviews now for 33 years, and all of our work comes back to those interviews.
That is amazing. So you became a thought leader by accident in a way. Like
Yeah, I mean,
it
I hated
just,
being a lawyer, and I was also curious about what other people did for a living, and I did want to answer the question from this, very a guy who was a senior partner who I really liked a lot, actually, and so I was intrigued by his question, and I thought it was cool that I could answer it. It turned out that The chief of staff of the army was curious about it. Jack Welch was curious about it. CEOs all over the world were also very curious about it. And so all of a sudden I had a perch.
Nice. That is, it inspires me because I think so often we observe things and we maybe have a conversation or we ponder it. But you took the time that you're like, you know what? Wouldn't it be interesting to just write about this? Like it's an observation that you had, and you're like, let me write about it. And that's what started this whole thing, which is amazing. So you've been doing this for years. So now we've had Gen X, you've written about millennials, management, leadership. What has remained constant and what has changed?
Well, I think what has changed is what was beginning to change when I first got interested in all of this, right? Was these macro changes that were really picking up steam. I mean, you could say globalization and technology have been shaping change for roughly 13,000 years. But by the late 80s and early 90s, globalization and technology were reaching a point where the world was becoming highly interconnected, rapidly changing, fiercely competitive, knowledge driven. Institutions were in a state of constant flux, really starting in the 80s, and they have been ever since.
Yeah.
The individuals sort of lost faith in the myth of job security right around then, and
Hmm.
individuals have been scrambling to figure out how to survive and succeed without old-fashioned job security. Even though, the idea of old-fashioned job security is probably a short-term historical anomaly that was maybe a few decades after the war. Other than that,
Right.
it's not the norm historically. So you have institutions in a state of flux, individuals scrambling to take care of themselves, an information tidal wave growing and growing and
Mm,
growing, and available at increasingly to people at their fingertips, immediacy accelerating constantly. So this transformation we've been watching, sort of an accident of history. We've been watching this transformation underway for the last 33 years. And what we've been watching is employers trying to adapt, and individuals trying to survive and succeed by developing a craft, developing expertise, and building a career, somehow being able to add value. And, again, what we've been interested in every step of the way is okay, as things change, as there's so much uncertainty and change, what are the best practices for organizations? What are the best practices for leaders, managers, and supervisors? What are the best practices for individuals trying to take care of themselves? And those are the questions we've been trying to answer. Those are the solutions we've been trying to bring to our clients.
yeah. And that's probably why I love this last book that you wrote, because it really is talking about employability and how to stay valuable.
Yeah,
The last
that's
one that,
exactly
that,
right.
that you wrote.
Yeah. And it used to be you hitch your wagon to the star of an established organization, pay your dues, climb the ladder, do as you're told, keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, wait for your boss to notice you, wait for the system to take care of you in the long term. But as I said before, that was probably always a myth, and such as it was somewhat accurate, it was fairly short-lived, and really just a matter of decades.
And just so people know, this is the book I'm talking about, Being Indispensable at Work, which was my favorite of the ones that you sent me, by the way. I like
Oh,
that one. I like
thanks.
that one a lot. So we both have a passion for managers and leaders, and and we've both, I think, done a lot of work. You've written about it. What is some advice you would have for a new manager during their first year? Often there's some things that they kind of learn the hard way. What advice would you have for managers their first year?
Well, look, people often move into positions of supervisory responsibility because they're very good at something. But way too often, it's not really because they're particularly good at managing people, right?
Not often.
They're good at their job. They've demonstrated that they're responsible. that they can be on time, that they have some attention to detail, that they're willing to work hard, that they're committed, that they're not going anywhere anytime soon. We start giving them more and more work, and pretty soon they have people to manage. And, way too often we teach them how to do a little extra paperwork, but nobody ever teaches them how to do the people work.
Yeah.
So most new managers, they find themselves in charge of people and trying to figure out how to use their authority to get things done. And what do? They either follow the path of least resistance, which is hands off, hands off, hands off until something goes wrong. Hey, don't call me your boss. After all, I was part of this team too. Hey,
Mm,
they put me in charge, but don't get the wrong idea. We're just colleagues, and I'm still one of the team. And then, of course, if something goes wrong, and they have to deal with it, then all of a sudden they remember they're the boss because
hmm.
they're on the line, and so they're hands off, hands off, hands off until something goes wrong. That's a terrible cycle to get into.
Yeah.
And I find, especially with new leaders, when they move into positions of supervisory responsibility, they tend to either soft pedal their authority because they feel they still have so much to learn. They're aware of how new they are. They're aware that nobody really taught them how to do the people part of managing. And so that's probably the biggest mistake is soft pedaling their authority
Hmm.
until things go wrong. The flip side is a lot of new managers, they overplay their authority at the beginning. They're like, all right, there's a new sheriff in town, see, and here's how it's gonna be, right? And you want something from me, you better listen up and do as you're told.
Right.
But the reality is, new leaders have a lot to learn. And so my advice to new leaders is don't soft pedal your authority, but don't overplay your authority. What you want to do is be aware of how much you have to learn and then take charge by learning. Way too many new leaders think, well, gosh, I have so much to learn. I better, soft pedal my authority for a while. And learning is a position of weakness, especially if you come in from the outside and take
Yeah.
over a team. And people are like, oh, I have to teach my new boss how to do their job. But what I tell folks is put yourself in a learning posture. That's not a position of weakness, it's a position of strength. Take charge by learning.
Yeah. I think there's a strength that comes from a manager who is willing to say, I may not have all the answers, but I'll find them, and we're gonna learn together. I think there's a strength in that. I think people respect that because if they're faking it, people are going to catch on. If they're, just uh,
And what do really smart people do? They learn. What do really
yes,
educated people do? They learn. That's why they're so smart and so educated. If you pretend you know stuff, you separate yourself from the actual information. You put yourself in a position where it's much harder to learn. And the beauty is that when you take an interest in other people and their work and the role they're playing and the work they're
yes,
doing and how they're doing it, when you take an interest in them, and you start learning about their work and you start learning about how they do their work, and you start having ideas about hey, maybe you should try this, maybe you should try that. You start to say, oh, gee, did you ever think of this? Did you ever think of that? And pretty soon these conversations are more and more dynamic. By the way, when do you stop learning?
never.
Never, never, right? You stop learning when you want to start getting a little bit worse every day.
Yeah, I like your thoughts on focusing on the people and taking an interest in what they do and getting to know them, which is really sometimes very challenging, particularly for our left-brained employees, folks that are in tech, folks that are in the sciences, folks that are in finance. So we've got a lot of, kind of just the facts type people who get promoted into these management roles. And if I'm honest, it's really not joyful for them because really the way they're wired, they like the they like the fact stuff. They like the spreadsheets. So I like how you said moving them from paperwork to people work,
Yeah.
which could be a new book, Bruce. That's a or the
There you go.
title of a speech.
All right. Well, I hereby promise I'll write the forward for you. Okay.
There you go. I think I might have to steal that one. So in It's Okay to Be the Boss, there's a lot of good content in there. And by the way, well, I gotta show you because he sent me a number of books. Here it is. It's Okay to Be the Boss. If they only read one chapter, which of the chapters would you choose? Now the whole book is good, but they
Yeah,
only
I
read
would
one
read
chapter.
chapter one, right? Chapter one or chapter 10 or would be the ones to read. And in many ways, that's just because business books are meant to follow a certain kind of a formula. HarperCollins published "It's Okay to Be the Boss." They're very smart. They know what they're doing, and they certainly helped me make it a better book. And it's by far my best book. I don't have children. I just have books. And just like parents, you're not supposed to have a favorite, but I do, just like most parents. And
Mhm.
It's Okay to Be the Boss is my favorite kid. So it tackled an issue I kept seeing, that so many people were in leadership roles, but they didn't really want to take charge. They didn't
Right.
know how to take charge. They didn't feel comfortable taking charge. And so they had this sense of empowerment, which was, kind of leave people alone to do things their way. They had this sense of fairness, that you should treat everybody exactly the same. They had this sense of, I don't want to
Yes.
seem like a jerk. So they didn't want to boss people around. I don't want to have confrontations. So they didn't want to hold people accountable. But that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's a good book, and I do a lot of management work, so I am now going to weave that into my repertoire, Bruce. So
Okay.
your book will be part of that. So let's look
Well,
at Not
thank you.
Everyone Gets a Trophy, which by the way, the title is freaking awesome, right? I mean, it was perfect for the time that it came out because there was a lot of discussion around that. Um, if you were writing that book today, would you change the title?
No, I mean, in fact, a third edition came out not that long ago, and now our research about young people in the workplace is 33 years running, right? So it's now longitudinal data. And I always tell folks, each generation is different based on the accidents of history that intersect with the life stages that generation is going through. We all lived through 9/11. Well, if you were
Mhm.
15, it was very different than if you were 50, right? We
Mhm.
all just lived through the pandemic. Very different if you were 15 than if you were 50, and so on. So these actions of history are what make generational difference per se. But we're all living through this era of profound change. And so what we've seen is these trends from Generation X to the first wave millennials to the second wave millennials to Generation Z, and now Generation Alpha. These trends have continued and accelerated. And what's happened is institutions are more and more in flux. Individuals are more and more feeling like they have to rely on themselves and can't rely on institutions. Of course, if you're growing up today and coming into the workplace, you learned how to think, learn, and communicate attached to a handheld supercomputer with
Yeah.
more computing power than the most powerful computers were, just 10 years ago. Um, of course, the parenting, teaching, and counseling trends of sort of helicopter parenting on steroids. And
Yeah.
sometimes I call it the snowplow in front clearing the path, and the helicopter gunship hovering over behind them, giving them covering fire.
Yeah.
So if you've grown up that way, today's young people have an incredible sense of their own powers, their own uniqueness, and this ethos where all styles are equally valid. Everybody's got to be themselves, and I think these trends have continued. And what I've learned is that if you're a leader, manager, supervisor, um, the real question is how do you make an employer-employee relationship work? How do you help these folks understand the transactional nature of the relationship without, so that, okay, well, what do we want from you today, tomorrow, this week, next week, this month, this year? And what do we have to offer you today, tomorrow, this week, this month, this year? I think the biggest change that's been underway for the last 33 years that we've been doing our research is a shift away from a long-term hierarchical mindset
Hmm.
to a short-term transactional mindset. And the
Interesting.
leaders who are willing to realize that, hey, people come to work because they need to make a living, they need to feed their family, and maybe they want to contribute to a mission. And then the question is, what do you have to offer them? And what are you doing to help them avoid unnecessary problems, to help them do more, better, faster, to help them do things the right way the first time more often? To get low performers out of the way, to recognize high performers. What are you doing to bring out the best in people of all ages? If you look at the youngest, least experienced people today, okay, the new young people coming into the workforce, by the way, in North America, were born in 2010. Are you with me?
Wow.
2010, with a note from their parents, mind you. Okay.
Wow.
2010, 16-year-olds in the workforce. But if you talk to today's young people, you'll find that they don't want everything on a silver platter. No, that's it's just not fair.
Right.
They're not a bunch of disloyal slackers. No, they don't want to be humored at work. They want to be taken seriously and they want to know what
Yes.
do I have to do to contribute? What do I have to do to earn
Right.
more? You tell me, what do I have to do to earn the things I need and want? And I think if you'd say that, okay, you know, in the workplace of the past, maybe successful people built a career and then wrapped a life around a career. What
Hmm.
successful people are aiming for now is to build a life and wrap a career around the kind of
Yes.
life they want to have. And so, what we try to do with leaders, managers, and supervisors in our clients is we try to help them recognize that managing people is much harder now than it used to be because
Yes.
it used to be that people would make one short-term sacrifice after another in exchange for vague long-term promises that may or may
Yes.
not vest in the deep distant future. Not anymore. Now people want to know today, tomorrow, this week, next week, what do you want from me? What do you have to offer me? And that takes much more skill and much more engagement on the part of managers.
Yes. Bruce, you're speaking my language, man, and you're validating what I'm saying because I actually have a number of organizations that are recognizing, first of all, people are not going to stay with them forever. And that's okay. They're recognizing that people will swing in and swing out, and it's not because they're disloyal, it's because this is just how the world works, and they're
Yeah,
okay with that. And they're doing their best to make the time that they're there so rich and valuable that they stay longer. That's really the best they can do. So I love those organizations that recognize that and are doing their best. Well, obviously they have trained managers. That's
yeah,
another thing.
that's right.
I mean, let's
That's right.
let's start with that. We do not like it's not like a magic wand is waved and it's like you are now promoted, ding, and you no, they actually provide them with the information and the skills and the practice to get better at a new job. It is a new
Yeah,
job.
right.
But
Imagine any other set of new tasks and responsibilities where you'd say, hey, look, we just want you to wing it,
right, you'll
right?
figure it out. You'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Ask a
I always say,
friend.
Right. I love speaking to accountants or the finance people, and I'll say, just think if you hired a new accountant and they were like, I don't like the general ledger system, and thanks very much, but I don't want to learn about it. I have my own way of keeping the books. I keep it all up here, see, and I got my own style. And you'd say, well, no, we're not going to let
No.
you manage our money then, and we'll be visiting you in prison perhaps someday. Um, but oh, people are our number one asset.
I
Oh,
know.
really? Oh, how do you manage them? I'm just winging it.
Yeah.
Bad
It,
idea.
it's crazy. So our managers need training, and I think our employees, I think good employers are going to help employees learn how to manage their careers long term.
Yeah,
I
that's
think that,
exactly right.
and it's not something that we thought about maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but it is something we're thinking about now because this is how the world is. And it is not just get your degree, get your job, move forward, and life is good. That's it's
Yeah,
not like
one
that.
day at a time, one day at a time. I don't know if you have there, I wrote a book called It's Okay to Manage Your Boss, which is one of the companions to It's Okay to Be the
I
Boss.
do not have that one.
That one's a Wiley book. And I always tell people, look, the first person you have to manage every day is yourself. The second
Yes.
person you have to manage every day is your boss. The third person you have to manage every day is anyone who reports to you, who has dinner with their family and talks about their boss and they're talking about you. And the fourth person you have to manage every day is everybody else. Because you're going to have to deal with vendors and customers and lateral
Yes.
colleagues and diagonal colleagues. And so, managing these relationships is something that the human element is being under taught, and the human element is still absolutely critical. And the more
Yeah.
things change, and the more uncertainty there is, the more we're helping our clients stay focused on the human element. I mean, maybe AI is going to take over soon. The robots will be doing everything. We will all be irrelevant, and that may be. But until then, as long as there are people doing the work, the human element is critical. And I think that organizations that take their eye off of those fundamentals suffer. They have
Yes.
unnecessary problems occur. Problems get out of control that could have been solved easily. Resources are squandered because they're not well planned and well utilized. People go in the wrong direction for days, weeks, or months on end because nobody noticed. Low performers hide out and collect paychecks. Mediocre performers think they're high performers. High performers get frustrated and think about leaving. Managers say,
Hmm.
it's easier if I just do this myself rather than try to delegate it to someone else. Well, all of those costs of not managing people well take up a huge amount of time,
Yes.
trouble, and money.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the end, it hits the bottom line, and that's when they start to care. When it hits the bottom line, they start to care. Until then, I think they see the whole human factor as just kind of let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and it's really not. It is a good business decision to care about the human factor in the workplace
Yeah,
and
and,
have
to
well-trained
your point,
managers.
what we do immediately, the first thing we do is explain the business case,
Yeah.
and explain when you are not following leadership and collaboration and self-management and followership best practices, right? When you're not teaching them and requiring them, and holding people accountable for them, there are measurable costs.
Yes.
But if you
Yes.
think of it this way, right? What's the most effective leadership culture? In my mind, the most effective leadership culture I've ever encountered in a workplace is the United States Armed Forces. Our number one client for decades was the United States Armed Forces. By the way, they have a very dangerous, frightening job. They will tell you they hire plenty of extraordinary people, but mostly they hire ordinary people. Often they hire very young people, often from the
Hmm.
lower end of the skill spectrum and the education spectrum. They don't pay very much. They have very little flexibility. And yet they get extraordinary performance out of people, young people, by the way. They get
Yes.
extraordinary performance out of them all day, every day. How do they do that? It's not just the patriotic mission, right? It's not just that they can make people do push-ups in the sand at 4 a.m., although that does help, and I highly recommend push-ups. There's no downside to push-ups. Um,
Hmm.
but no, their secret is they don't put anyone in charge of anyone without teaching them the fundamentals of management. And
Wow.
and before they ever do that, right? So if you're a Marine fire team leader, the lowest level of leadership in the Marine Corps, you're in charge of 3 Marines. They don't let you do that before they teach you. Here's how to have a team huddle. Here's how to have a one-on-one. Here's how to make expectations clear. Here's how to practice situational leadership. Here's how to talk like a coach. Here's how to document performance. Here's how to reward people. Here's how to hold people to a higher standard. Here's how to impose discipline, right? So they don't put anyone, a 19-year-old kid, in charge of other people before they teach them the basics. And remember this, they don't put anyone in charge of anyone without first teaching the followers how to follow. The first thing you
Mm.
do if you join the Marines is you go to boot camp. For
Right.
13 weeks, you
It's
learn
tough.
how to
Yes.
manage yourself and how to manage your boss and how to play your role and how to follow diligently. And it works like a charm, right? And if it works for the most powerful fighting force in the history of the world, while people are shooting at them, God bless them and keep them safe, right? After all, in the private sector, I'm not suggesting you turn your outfit into a military style outfit, but for gosh sakes, teach people how to manage themselves. Teach
Right.
people how to manage their relationship with their boss. Teach people how to collaborate. And don't put anyone in charge of anyone without teaching them the fundamentals.
Oh my gosh, preach, Bruce, preach. My little niece is just coming home from the Air Force, so
God
this is
bless her.
hitting home now. Yeah, she's been there almost 10 years. It went so fast. I was at her graduation. It was amazing.
Did she
But
go
I'm
to the academy?
thinking she went to no, she was out in near San Antonio, Texas,
Okay.
where they had the boot camp. And let me tell you, that's like if you've never been to a military graduation, that is a life-changing experience just to watch that. Like the hair on the back of my neck stands up now. But all this to say, everything that you're telling me about what the military does, no wonder they have such a hard time coming out and going into civilian life and having like regular jobs like we all do because that rigor is not in place and they are going to report to people who don't know what the heck they're doing,
Yeah,
right? And they're going to work with colleagues who don't have the same self-management and work ethic.
that's right.
So it no wonder that that whole shift is so difficult for them. But in this conversation, I'm thinking to myself, managers today, and it's shifted because I've been out in the work world for a long time now.
Yeah.
They're expected to coach, mentor, develop talent, support mental health, drive engagement, manage performance, all that, and complete their own project work. There was
Yeah.
a time when managers didn't have their own project work, they just managed people. Now they've got the whole ball of wax. Is this unrealistic, Bruce? Is this too much?
Well, it is what it is. I do think that one of the biggest problems in today's workplace is overcommitment syndrome. And in my book, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work, I start with fight
Right.
overcommitment syndrome.
Yes.
Just as it's okay to be the boss starts with fight the undermanagement epidemic. And those go hand in hand, right? So leaders, managers, and supervisors, they need to roll up their sleeves and they need to engage with people so that they can help monitor people's workloads, monitor the allocation of tasks, responsibilities, and projects. Make sure that people aren't having unnecessary problems that are immensely time consuming. Make sure that they're not squandering resources that have to be recouped, that they're not doing things the wrong way so that there has to be a bunch of costly, time consuming rework. So, the best way to help folks fight overcommitment syndrome on the front lines is to have leaders, managers, and supervisors helping them understand you can't do everything for everybody. So we've
Right.
got to set priorities. We've got to understand ground rules. We've got to make sure that next steps are clearly articulated. That we work from plans. That we monitor, measure, and document every step of the way, so we don't go too far in the wrong direction. So I think leaders doing the real work of leadership um, help people get more work done better and faster, help people stay focused on the top priorities and back burner. Something's got to be back burned, right? So
Right.
you don't want people deciding what to back burner. You want managers helping them decide that. And similarly, when managers are super busy, the first thing I say to them is, okay, well, so you're telling me you have no time. Oh, I don't have any time. I'm like, so you have zero time. Yeah. Okay. Step one, set aside an hour a day for managing. No, you don't understand. I
Yes.
don't have any
Oh
time.
my goodness.
Okay. Then set aside 90 minutes a day for managing. Because the bottom line is, if you don't do that, you will spend all your time solving unnecessary problems, getting problems under control that have blown up
Yeah.
unnecessarily, scavenging for and salvaging for resources, helping people do rework, trying to deal with some low performer who's been hiding out for months or years, begging a high performer not to leave. And if you don't lead, manage, and supervise in a highly engaged way every day, you won't be able to delegate work properly to other people. So the more you are pressed for time, the more you need to invest your time in managing. There's
Yes.
168 hours in a week. If you're smart, you sleep 56 of them. That leaves 112 hours. You may or may not commute. Let's just say you do and you have some transaction time. Call it 100 hours a week you got. Maybe you have a family and you love to spend time with your family. Maybe you groom and you have a snack every now and then. That leaves you 85 hours a week to work. Okay? I'm sort of kidding, but even if you have 80 hours a week to work, you don't have enough time. The question is, how do you allocate that time?
Right.
And you have to allocate that time in ways that they're not making any more time. There's just 168 hours in a week. But funny enough, there is a time manufacturing factory, and it's inside you. Every problem you avoid, you manufacture time. Every problem you solve quickly, you manufacture time. Every resource you plan well, you manufacture time. Every person you help do their work right the first time, you manufacture time. Every low performer you get rid of, you manufacture time. Every high performer you retain, you manufacture time. Every responsibility you're able to responsibly delegate, you manufacture time. So if you want to start manufacturing time, you've got to focus on the human element.
Yeah, yeah. And you've got to take time for thinking. For my friend at Tesco, he says to muse. I need time to muse. I think it's very UK, but I think managers, many of our organizations have created an environment where it is a badge of honor to be busy at all times, to be putting out fires at all times. That's really what they're rewarding. So
Yep.
it is hard for someone who's trying to make the shift to be the good manager to say, I want to spend 2 hours a day pondering, thinking, planning to get ahead of this stuff, to do what you're saying, to manufacture time. Because if you're putting out fires all day,
Yep.
you're going to be putting out fires all day. But if you can get
Exactly.
ahead of that and say, what is it, a process problem? Is it a people problem? What's the root cause of this?
Yes.
I
Or
did
oh,
have,
and how can I build up Mr. Blue and Ms. Red
yes.
and help build up their productive capacity so I have a stronger team member helping me carry all this weight. You mentioned, and I often talk about firefighting. And so many managers are stuck in firefighting. I often cite one of our clients over the years has been the United States Park Service and the Forest Service as well. And I often cite one of our clients is a fellow. He's very famous. He's the most famous park ranger in America. He's a talking bear. Um, and you probably know who I'm talking about, Smokey.
I think
And
I've seen him.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love telling people abroad. I love going abroad and telling folks about how we have a very famous park ranger who's a talking bear. And they'll look around, there'll be some American going, that's actually true, and Smokey's famous for saying a lot of things. One of the things he's famous for saying is, it's a whole lot easier to prevent a fire than it is to put one out. The guy's a genius, and he's a
Yeah.
bear.
Yeah.
So I like to tell people, follow the Smokey the Bear rule. Prevent fires. Your job is to prevent fires because it's a whole lot easier to prevent a fire than it is to put one out.
Yeah. I think our organizational culture needs to feed that philosophy. Because I
Yeah,
think people will do what the organizational culture leads them to do. I have one CEO, and it warms my heart that I at least have one who said, Teresa, if people don't have at least 90 minutes of their day not booked, like not in a meeting, not scheduled, like, but 90 minutes a day that is left open, why are they even managers?
yeah,
What's
I
the
agree
what's the
completely.
and I was like, oh, praise the Lord. Like that was what I needed to hear from a senior leader, because he
Yeah.
recognizes it. You can't help the organization if you're in meetings all day. So what concerns do you have most about the future of leadership with
Well,
all this
I
going
think
on?
when we talk with young people who may uh, be good candidates for leadership, one of my concerns is more and more and more of those potential candidates for leadership say no thanks. I see the challenges of leadership. I see how hard my manager works. I see how my manager is in meetings constantly. I see how my manager is having to answer for errors and delays and shortfalls. And I see how my manager struggles to keep the high performers engaged and struggles to light a fire under the chairs of the low performers and hold them accountable. I think a lot of folks today are wondering, well, what are the rewards of leadership? And so
Hmm.
that's something I'm concerned about. I'm always curious about the environment of change and uncertainty. I think AI is the most profound transformational technology. I mean, not just in my lifetime, but I think going back to the Industrial Revolution, I think it's a slam dunk that AI will be more transformational than the Industrial Revolution. So where are we going with that? I like to read Noah Yuval Harari. There's a great book called Nexus, which, his books are Sapiens, Homo Deus, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and Nexus. They're these great tomes. He's one of the great thinkers, I think. And Harari argues that, the robots are taking over, that there is almost an evolutionary process occurring. And his one of his big concerns is that there will be a big divide based on financial resources. That essentially, the wealthy will be able to have, you know, treatments in their brain that give them a 200 IQ, and treatments in their body that will allow them to live to be 200. And they'll have all the money, and the robots will be
Hmm.
doing all the work. And traditionally, when you had the elite power classes throughout history, they needed the rest of us to be healthy enough to do the work and fight the wars. And if you have robots to do the work and fight the wars, I worry about the power dynamics over the next decades. And of course, I'm very worried about macro forces over which we have no control, ranging from trade wars and fighting wars to global climate change and, all the various factors that are just way beyond any of our control. Is what I tell people every single day is there is so much happening that's outside your control.
Yeah.
Focus like a laser beam on your thoughts, your words, your actions, your relationships, your learning, and take care of yourself. because those are the things you can control. Take care of yourself and take care of others. Add value. Be valuable to other people, and learn and be a service-minded person. Stay focused on the human element.
Oh my gosh, Bruce, I'm already thinking sometimes after we have these, I'll cut a clip and I put it on social media because it's that memorable. Dude, that quote right there is, I mean, we need direction. We need something to help us focus. What matters most? Where should we be spending our time? What can we control? And that was excellent advice. Excellent advice. You mentioned AI. I knew it was going to come up. It comes up in every conversation. How is AI changing the manager's role?
Well, AI is in its infancy. One of the things I've noticed, I speak at a lot of conferences, as I know you do, and every conference now has a speaker about change and uncertainty and says, good news, bad news, the pace of change and uncertainty right now is slower than it will ever be for the rest of your life. So enjoy today. And then,
Wow.
and there's always an AI speaker who says, whatever you think about AI today, trust me, it is stupid compared to the AI that will be available tomorrow. And you are dealing with the dumbest AI tools you will ever encounter for the rest of your life. So I think the landscape is uncharted. I do think that the ability to use AI is emerging now as one of the most important skills. AI doesn't, it replaces a lot of work. So if you're a coder, for example, a software
Oh,
coder,
yeah.
it turns out, oh, the computer just can do that a whole lot better than you can. Sorry. And some argue, like Harari argues, that eventually the computer will be able to be so tuned into our sensory data, whether it's our eye movement, eventually olfactory data, sound data, visual, all kinds of data, that the machine will know us better than we know ourselves. The machine will be able to know us better than a doctor could through intensive diagnosis. And so the question is, will there be anything that the machines can't do better than we can?
Mm.
And I think the biggest fear is human irrelevance. And that's why, so how is it changing the job of the manager? I mean, I think what I would say about, you know, most organizations are going through profound change right now. And I think a lot of managers are hoping that change will be an event, will get past the change, and then they can get back to work. The
Mm.
hardest thing about being a leader, manager, supervisor today, or an individual contributor is recognizing that change is not an event. It is a process that is going to accelerate until we're either newly relevant or completely irrelevant. And what we need to do is focus on each other. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.
Yeah. Good advice. And those I still see people who have not used AI at all, who have not even tried it. Managers and individual contributors. I think everyone at least needs to be able to speak to it. Even if you don't use it all the time, you need to at least know what's going on out there. Um, my last question for you is like you have done so much. I can't even imagine what you're working on going forward, but there's probably something up your sleeve that you're working on. What's next for you and how can we help you to tell us what we can do to help you?
Well, I am deep in a memoir right now, and it's a karate memoir. I've practiced karate since I was 7 years old, and I'm almost 60 now. And it's called The Karate Master and Me. It's about my lifelong relationship with my teacher
Nice.
and what karate has done for me. And it is, it's a real memoir in that I'm realizing a lot of things about myself that I didn't want to admit, and not just that there's still a weak, bullied little boy hidden inside me, but that maybe there have been a lot of times where I've been too hard on people. And so I'm grappling with arrogance and fear and my lifelong quest for strength. And I want to share my karate journey with people.
My God, and I'm feeling it. I'm an empath, dude, so I'm feeling what you're feeling. And I can't wait to read your memoir. Bruce,
Thank you.
you are an amazing and special person. You truly are. I
Well,
love how
likewise.
you went to school to be an attorney, so you got all this really good foundational knowledge and then fell into, hey, I'm curious about this. Let me just write an article. And that led to such an amazing path. And because of your curiosity and your wonderful writing skills, you've shared what you've learned with all of us. And you've made the world a richer place. You really have.
Well, Risa, I can't thank you enough for that really lovely comment and your kind compliments. And I'm so glad to get to know you. And I knew if you're friends with Don Walker, you must be a special person. So I'm so glad to begin this relationship, and I look forward to continuing it.
Well, thank you so much. And my friends that are in the chat, thank you for your participation and for listening. And I look forward to rewatching this because there's things I wanted to write down, but I'm like, no, don't write. Let be, but there's stuff I want to write down from this conversation. So many good nuggets. Bruce, stay in touch. Those
Yeah.
of you that are here, if you haven't read his books, he's got a ton of them. I like them all, but I really like that one, probably because I do a lot of work with careers now. I like being indispensable at work. I loved that. I just think it's a needed message. So
Well,
thank
thank
you,
you.
my friend. We'll end our recording here and then we'll move on to the after party.